Here's something that might surprise you. In Hong Kong, one of the most educated, internationally connected cities in the world, there are thousands of people who are completely fluent in English, who understand what it's like to learn a language in a system that doesn't always teach it well, who would make outstanding English teachers. And most of them have never considered it, or if they have, they don't know where to start. Today we are asking, what does it actually take to teach English professionally? Do you need a qualification? Does it matter which one? And if you are someone in Hong Kong who speaks fluent English, what actually is stopping you? I have the perfect guest for this conversation. Natasha is an experienced English teacher, and she's our TQ UK Level 5 TEFL course assessor, and I'm the IQA, the internal quality assurer for our centre. So between the two of us, we've seen this from every angle. Natasha, welcome to the Couch Potato Talk.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So before we start, can you give our listener a quick intro, like who you are and how long have you been teaching and how you ended up becoming an assessor?
Okay, perfect. So I've been teaching English for more than 20 years. I used to work in a primary school for about five and a half years. Then I moved to a different country. And obviously, I still wanted to stay in this career because that's what I've studied for. So I had a lot of opportunities to teach in the UK as I'm living in the UK. But for me, it wasn't something that I wanted to do because I wanted to help non-natives how to improve their speaking skills, their writing skills, pretty much everything related to language. So I started teaching online, but in order for me to teach online, I needed to have like certain type of certificates, which I got them all through the years. And ever since, I've been just teaching online, which obviously it does help me a lot with my career because it gives me also freedom. I think it's a good idea for people who would love to or have the capability of becoming a teacher because it's not something that everyone can do. And obviously we're going to speak about that all through our conversation today. But yes, I've been teaching for years. I've been teaching international students in Europe, Asia, Africa also.
Yeah, so you've been on both sides, like you've gone through the process of becoming a qualified teacher yourself, and now you are also the one evaluating others. So that's exactly the perspective we need today. And I would like to start with a reality check. So when you think about the landscape of English teacher or English teaching, especially in Asia, in Hong Kong, what kinds of people are actually in classrooms teaching English? Is there a very specific type of person or is it all over the place?
Yeah. Well, the truth is that English teacher can actually come from diverse backgrounds, because I've met people from different careers joining and becoming an ESL teacher. And then I got some parents that they just didn't want to go to work because they wanted to spend more time with their family. So they became teachers. And obviously, I feel like everything started during the pandemic because a lot of people lost their jobs and they said, well, it's a good thing for me to kind of rebrand myself and choose a different pathway in my life. So some people, in my experience, what I've met working internationally, they love to teach in Asia because obviously it's much different than Europe. And in order for you to actually go there, you need to have a certain kind of degree, diploma, certificates. And one of probably the biggest misconceptions is that if you speak English fluently, or if you are a native speaker, or those who are native speakers, that they could easily become teachers. But in reality, it's not really like that because there are other things that you need to have in order for you to be a teacher. Because you could have a great knowledge of the subject, in this case we are talking about English language, but it doesn't mean that you know how to simplify things and make it more appropriate for your students. So in other words, I think that teaching English isn't really a career for everyone. So I guess it doesn't really matter where you come from or what is your nationality. Pretty much that has nothing to do with it. It's more about if you love this, how can you actually enjoy this? Because this type of work doesn't have to be just followed by the rules from the book, because every class is different, every student is different. At the end of the day, you are working with humans, and that's probably the hardest thing.
Yeah. I think that like completely matches what I see in Hong Kong because we work with lots of schools in Hong Kong. And I think one of the most common paths I encounter is like someone who finishes university and they don't quite know what to do, but they speak English, so they think they can teach English. So yeah, that sounds quite logical on the surface. But I think speaking a language and teaching it are completely different skill sets.
Absolutely.
So yeah, the knowledge of doing something and the ability to teach is like not the same thing. Yeah.
Right.
But you said that like for teaching in Asia and teaching in Europe are quite different. Like in what ways and how different it can be?
To be honest, when I started teaching online, I actually had students from China. That's how I started. And I worked with that company for about 3 years, I think. It's different. It is different than Europe for sure. Because in Europe, we're kind of a little bit more relaxed, it's fine. We go to classes, we're going to study, we're going to learn. However, I'm not saying that is the right thing, to be honest. When I started teaching Chinese students, because that was my startup in terms of online teaching, I found that they're really serious about learning. My point is, in order for you to be a better teacher, I guess, first, what you have to do is you need to do a little bit of research. You need to see what is their cultural backgrounds, because people from China and people from Germany are completely different. So you have to know who you're dealing with. At first, obviously, I didn't have a lot of contact with Asian people, specifically Chinese. First, my students were maybe at the age of 5, 6, 7. They were like pretty young. And I needed to be very patient, and every single class was like a completely brand new experience for me, because oftentimes you would have the parent next to them and just shouting at them because they don't listen. But I do have those students that, they stood up over there, everything you say, they will write it down, and I love that. I love that serious approach towards a language, because I think how you're going to build your basic foundation, it's really important. If you have a strong foundation, then everything else comes so much easier. Asian students are very devoted to studying. They really love to learn. Like you can see that they really enjoy that, and I can see that this is really important for them. I'm not saying in Europe is not the case. Like I have students from Russia and Ukraine and Germany and France and Italy. But you can see they're a little bit more relaxed. They will be late for class. It's okay. Sorry, teacher. I had something to do. I didn't do the homework because, I don't know. I just wanted to hang out with friends. So you can see it's kind of different. With my Asian students, that never happened, to be honest. And I'm pretty happy about it. Because if I teach you something today and you come the next class and you don't know it, it's kind of, I don't want to say offensive for me, but you know what I mean. Chinese students will make you feel like that, like Asian students in general. At the moment, I have a lot of Malaysian students. I've been working with them for 5 years, and they are pretty serious also. Before you actually start teaching with certain type of nationalities, the first thing you need to do is you need to do a little bit of background check, because you need to know what is normal for them, what type of classes do they prefer, like do they want to be super relaxed, do they like jokes. I have a lot of students, they just want to have fun. It's okay, if they don't have any homework, they haven't passed the exam and so on. They don't take that as serious as Asian students. I do have a lot of students from Hong Kong. I have this one boy that I have classes with him every Monday. But the good thing is, his mom always will text me, send me a message on Saturday or Sunday to share his homework. And she says, that's what I'm paying for, right? I want my son to learn the language in the best possible way. I'm investing in him, so he needs to be serious. Because I had this conversation with his mom and I was like, you're the only person that actually sending me the homework. Normally, I would go to class and I will ask the students if they have the homework, and they will say yes, no, how, I just didn't have time to do it. But specifically with students from Hong Kong, the parents will send me the homework, and I love that. So you can see seriousness from both sides, the student and the parent at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's kind of Asian culture, especially in Hong Kong, the students, the parents, they are serious about English education and also in general education. So they will just like pay for tutoring and like do a lot of extra lessons and go to classes. And yeah, they do like a lot of homework exercises, that kind of things. So it's quite different like from Europe. Yeah. But before we get into TEFL specifically, what do you think most people assume it takes to be an English teacher? Like, is there any general public perception?
Well, I would say the first misconception is that everyone can do it. I don't think so. I completely disagree with that. Obviously, English is not my native language. My accent changed quite a lot. Because growing up, I had at university, I had a lot of American teachers. So my accent was very American. Then I moved in the UK. I've been living in the UK for 10 years and my accent changed again. So I want to say that accent, whatever accent you have, doesn't really give you or doesn't make you any problem for sure. But the second thing is you really have to be very patient. If you don't know how to deal with people, probably this is not the right job for you. Because oftentimes you will have different kind of students. You will have students that, they wouldn't ask a lot of questions. Guys, do you have any questions? They will say, no. And they're not going to have 100 questions, in the next couple of classes. But you also have these students that they keep asking questions and questions all through the class. You really, really need to have a lot of patience. Second thing, you have to be a great listener. Because if your student speaks and you keep interrupting them, and why am I saying this? Because oftentimes during the classes, you will hear a bunch of things that are absolutely wrong. But you can't just step in. You can't just say, oh, I'm sorry, that was wrong. Or no, that's not how it goes, unfortunately. So it does take a lot of patience. It does take a lot of knowledge. It doesn't mean if you graduated as a teacher that, the next day you're just going to do the job and you will be perfect. Absolutely not. I've been teaching for 20 years and I'm still learning things. I got those TEFL, TESOL, CELTA. I have 2 BA degrees. So my education didn't stop when I, finished university. Absolutely not. That is not enough. I keep upgrading myself because my kind of theory is if you don't know how to simplify it, then you probably don't know it as well. Because if you are a teacher, it doesn't mean you know everything. Sometimes I also need to prepare myself because it doesn't mean like I'm using, Future Perfect every single class. Absolutely not. So I need to remind myself also because it's not like a common grammar test that you would use every day. So again, it takes knowledge, it takes patience, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. You have to analyze different people, different personalities, different approaches. So if you just follow the rules from the book, like as you graduated, then obviously that's not enough. It's not going to help you.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot like for teaching and also like for a teacher, it's not just like you speak the language and it's not just like you graduated from university, then that's done. So you have to like do a lot more, like for example doing some training, and also you need to keep learning as a teacher as well, like as the technology, AI, like everything. And also like you face different students and you may think about different approaches and different methods for teaching different students. So yeah, and I think that the assumption like some people might just think you just need to be fluent, you just need confidence, and that's easy and anyone can do that. It's actually not true. And like to the students who deserve properly trained teachers, and to the people who would actually be great at this but never pursue it because it seemed too casual or too informal and not a real profession. And I think TEFL, like the course, and also the one we talked about, like the TESOL or CELTA, that would change something like that. Yeah, I think Hong Kong people who are fluent in English are actually incredibly well positioned to become great English teacher. But most of them don't realize it, and most of them don't have the qualification to back it up. So Natasha, from everything you've seen as a teacher and an assessor, when a candidate or a teacher comes in who's fluent in English and understands the language and the learner's experience from both sides, what kind of teacher can that person become?
If you keep upgrading yourself, if you keep investing in you, if you keep analyzing your classes, because if you think, oh, this is the best class I ever had, then probably that is not the right approach. You definitely could have done it better. you have to challenge yourself because, if you have like one template and this is how my class will run, it's probably not going to happen, because that's why we have a lesson plan. We plan the lesson, but essentially, if you manage to score 50% from your planning, you're on the right track. And if you do more than that, 70 or 100%, well done to you. But I don't think that's the reality, because oftentimes I plan something for my classes and I end up doing completely something else. And why is that happening? Because you got priorities. You want to know what is important for the class, what type of students you actually have, what is important for them. It does take time for you to learn, and getting like TEFL, TESOL, or CELTA doesn't mean next day, you got it today and next day you could be a great teacher. Absolutely not. But they could actually help you to understand the overall education in terms of how you can teach English to non-natives. So when I was in Malaysia, they said to me, if you want to stay, you can start working tomorrow because we need those teachers. So I feel like TEFL and TESOL specifically are very popular in Asia in general. I would say CELTA is more like a European thing, and USA also. CELTA is something that they would consider. Like if you want to work in the US, definitely need to have CELTA. TEFL will help you, but maybe it will help you like in a specific type of maybe educational places, like a kindergarten maybe. Yes, potentially yes. But it has to be like multicultural society, because otherwise, you can't really just go there with the TEFL and TESOL, because US curriculum for like primary and secondary school, it's a little bit different than European, and I think it's more closer to Asian education, to be honest. I'm not really sure, because when I was there and when I was like, just wanted to see like, what are my future options in case if I want to move there, right? So I guess for future teachers that they would consider getting a certain kind of certificate. And obviously, the first thing that they need to decide is where do they want to use it? If you want to use it in Asia, yes, these are the things that you need to have because they're mandatory and also going to help you to have like a more understanding of the course and how you can have the approach. If you want to teach in Europe, it's a little bit different. As I said, Europeans are a little bit more relaxed. We don't get things as serious as Asian people do. So it's a little bit different. But I would say the first thing is, yes, you need to upgrade yourself constantly. You have to watch maybe like even podcasts because they help a lot. If I get an experience from this teacher and that teacher, I would start implementing all of those tips in my classes. I think what makes things easier now is internet. Because when I started teaching 20 years ago, we didn't have, we had the internet, but it was a bit more expensive. We didn't have all of those materials. If I wanted to learn something, I need to open a book and so on. Now things become so much easier. And I think that future teachers and teachers, that they just started, they actually have a huge advantage and they should definitely use it because it does take less time compared to how we used to study. So it will be very helpful for them. It will be definitely beneficial for them.
Yeah, there are lots of tools nowadays for teachers. Like you can use the AI tools and also like for a lot of different kind of like online tools and games like etc. for students and teaching as well. And for the TEFL and TESOL, I think in Asian countries it's really popular. I think the main reason is that it's the requirement of the schools. Like when they hire a teacher in for their school or for their center, it's a compulsory requirement for having a TEFL or TESOL qualified. And so I think that's why people are all doing this kind of courses nowadays if they want to teach in Asia. And I also want to say something here from my own experience, because at Culture Potato Education we also run some NET placement, which is Native English Teacher Program and placement for Hong Kong schools. So we are not just training teachers, we're actually placing them. And over the years I've seen a lot of teachers come through, and some of the best teachers I've ever encounter are not from those traditional English-speaking countries, not from the UK or US, Australia, and they are from the Philippines, from India, and from Hong Kong itself. They're from different countries basically, and they're their English is native level, and the pronunciation is clear, grammar is solid, and the classroom presence and the classroom management is outstanding. And they have one more thing that makes them exceptional. So they've lived the experience of mastering English as a serious pursuit. So I think when people ask us, like, does it matter where you're from? And I think it really depends on your level, your training, and your commitment to the students in front of you.
True.
And that's it. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And let's talk about TEFL itself. I think a lot of people have heard the term but don't really know what it means. So if someone came to you and said they'd never heard of TEFL, like, how would you explain it in plain terms?
Okay, cool. So TEFL actually stands for Teaching English as a Foreign Language. It's a pretty simple course because it does give you enough knowledge to start becoming a teacher. So what's the catch? The catch is when you're learning a language, it doesn't essentially mean like it's the same like you would study history at school. Absolutely not. Because we have writing, we have reading, we have listening, and we have speaking. TEFL can actually help you because every single skill is separated. So you have to basically learn quite a lot. You have to read a lot to make sure that you will be able to simplify things for your students. TEFL can really, really help you with that. Now, for example, if you have a proper TEFL course, which can teach you far more grammar than if you actually had at university. Because we do have a lot of teachers that, they've graduated in English, like English literature at university, but they still do not understand the grammar as much. With TEFL, you can absolutely achieve that. So TEFL can teach you lesson planning. It could teach you classroom management, which is really important, which means you know how to control your class. Because it's not like you just come to class and you say, okay, today we're going to talk about the weather. You need to know how you can include some activities, exercises, a little bit of speaking. Also, you need to challenge those students. With TEFL, you can definitely achieve that. However, really important for you to understand psychology. Psychology is something that it's personally my passion. I like criminal psychology, which has nothing to do with education, but it does help. It helps you to see if the student actually understands what you're saying to them. Because oftentimes, as I said at the beginning, they could just say no questions, all clear. In reality, it's not like that because you're going to start reading them. You can judge by their faces if they are confused, if they understand, they're listening to you. All of those things can definitely be taught, so you can learn that. Obviously, you need to have the right course. TEFL can help you.
Yeah, I think in the TEFL qualification, you usually do more than 100 hours course.
Yeah.
So it will cover everything, like lesson planning, grammar, methodology, classroom management. And those things are like something you have to learn in every TEFL course. But I think there's a huge difference in quality between different TEFL qualifications. Like you can find a 120-hour online course for just $100 that gives you a certificate in few days. And then you will have something like the TQ UK 1, like the level 5 TEFL course we are offering at our center. That one, which is internationally recognized. So I think many qualifications, many courses, they have the word TEFL on them, but the depth of training, the set components, the credibility are completely different.
Sure.
So as an assessor and a teacher, what do you actually see teachers learn through a proper TEFL course? Like things they couldn't have just picked up by standing in a classroom for a year.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think you can easily, well, at least for me, being in this educational sector for so many years, you can easily see who have been trained properly and who haven't been. It's really easy to see. The traditional teaching back in the times, like maybe 20 years ago, even when I was a student, would be the teacher will speak for about, I don't know, if the class is 45 minutes, they will probably speak 30 minutes maybe. So that is not something we do now. Now, what our approach is, we want to see how the students think about this thing, whatever the topic is. It could be even grammar, because most of the times, let's say if they're like intermediate level, the students at their intermediate level, and if you try asking them questions, oftentimes they do know more than what they actually think they know. They just don't know, we call it that way. Like, for example, when I ask what are modal verbs, they have no idea. And if I tell them, okay, can you make me a sentence with should, would, could, and so on, and I would ask them to analyze the sentence, they can see what the modal verb is and what is the role. So my point is, oftentimes they do know things, they just don't know how they know them because nobody didn't explain to them. And that's where the qualified, the good teacher or the proper training teacher, you can easily, notice it. As I said, the book on its own does not help you enough. You just have to go a little bit wider than that. So definitely with TEFL course, as you mentioned, there are many hours, different type of courses. I remember the first time when I got mine, because I was in a rush, it was like 50 hours. And I did it like in 2 days. And then obviously I started teaching and I was getting a little bit deeper in this. And then I did my research, and you can have a TEFL for 70 hours, 100 hours, 120 hours, and the list goes on and on. Here, with the more hours, you actually get more proper training. You're prepared for pretty much every situation that's gonna come up in your classes. Think of this as an investment because it will pay off in the future. If you're thinking becoming a teacher just for the summer, then I guess that TEFL or TESOL for 20 hours, it will do your job. But if this is your career, this is what you choose to work in the future, you definitely need to get the quality one and get more hours. So the longer the course is, the better understanding you're going to get.
As an experienced teachers, I think we definitely know who has been trained and who haven't. So I think the courses, the TEFL courses, is not like, as you mentioned, like the longer hours that will be more different content, a lot more modules in the course. And also, like for some courses, they provided the teaching practice, like for the cert TESOL and also our TEFL course, which contains some teaching practice, will be quite beneficial to the candidates who have never taught before, so that they can gain some experience during the courses. And I think also in Hong Kong, the teaching culture has historically been very teacher-centered. Like the teacher talks and students listen, copy and memorize. So a good TEFL qualification completely challenges that. And I think especially in recent years, like in many countries, they have changed, like everything has been changed. Like the teaching culture and the learning culture has been changed to student-centered. So for like in a teaching qualification, like a TEFL course, they will teach you how to engage and interact with the students and also design the lesson activities and like everything. So that will be more like redesigned experience around the learner. So I think it will be like a mindset shift, not just some teaching techniques and skills.
Totally.
I want to get into the insider perspective now, because most people never get to hear this. Like what separates the ones who do really well from the ones who struggle?
Okay.
What do you think?
I think that the candidates who perform best are not necessarily the most confident and fluent. We spoke about that at the beginning, we mentioned that, and I feel like natives will hate me for this, but it doesn't mean if you were a native speaker that you could do the job. Definitely. And one of the schools that I work with, we have like a bunch of teachers, different nationalities, and I love that. I personally think that an international teacher that comes from a different background can actually do a little bit better job compared to the native one. And why is that? Because for us, so as I said at the beginning, I'm also non-native, but the way that we have the approach towards a foreign language, it's completely different. I had the opportunity to work with natives for a couple of years. They were like pure natives. And I found so many mistakes in their grammar, not in their words. Vocabulary is perfect, definitely. However, the grammar, I feel like international teachers that come from different countries, not native speaker, a native English country, they have a better grammar skill. And that's why international students are better at grammar. And I love that. I think that is the right approach. Because obviously you need to know, why am I studying English? Right? What is the benefit? What am I going to do with that? Do I want to live in the UK? Do I want to go in Australia? What's my plan? Now, once you're going to decide that, okay, I want to have a life in the UK. So what do I need? You need the language for sure. Do you need to copy their accent? You can. You don't really have to. They're pretty understandable about that. One thing that I keep saying to my students is, the first time when I moved in the UK and people will ask me, "Hi Natasha, how are you?" And I'm going to be, "Oh, I'm not feeling well, I have a headache," for example. They will be like, "Oh," and that was it. And I was like, why are you asking me that? That is part of the culture, because they don't really care. So you have to understand that. If you don't, you're just going to get easily annoyed, because oftentimes I become that person now. I say things that essentially, not like I don't mean them, but it's still like part of the culture, because I've been here for so many years. I communicate with people, I accept the culture, and that's pretty much it. However, as I said, being a native speaker is not enough, because they have this, during the pandemic, everyone just tried to find a job. That was the time we were living in. And they said, well, with TEFL, I can just sit at home and teach Chinese students how to speak English. Yeah, that's fine, but is it really good? Like, is this really something that you know how to do it? I remember when I started teaching, there was this person from USA, and oftentimes when we would have like a meeting and he would jump in, he would be like, "I really don't know why you're hiring non-natives. Like, what do they know better than I do?" And we had this colleague, and she was like, "Well, you can see they're great listeners. They have empathy. They understand that the student has an issue." And this is really important for me. I speak a couple of languages just because I lived in a multicultural environment, and I kind of had to learn them. I didn't put a lot of effort. I think it came very natural to me, but it happened. My point is, for non-natives, it's much easier to understand where the struggle comes from, because every language is different. And especially like if you only speak one language, if you only speak English, there's no way you can understand what the issue is, because every single grammar is the same. And especially obviously because my first degree is in translation, if I try to translate something and if I translate word by word, that sentence would be a proper mess. It wouldn't have the meaning that I want the sentence to have. And I feel like if you don't speak at least 2 languages, you're not able to understand this. And what I love about Asian students is they do speak, obviously it depends on the country that they're coming from, but most of them, they speak 2 to 3 foreign languages, because, either they travel a lot or the language is very similar to something else. And that's how I learned a lot of languages. So you need to have empathy. You need to be able to understand. I think the strongest candidates could be very reflective, because they love the feedback. If a teacher does not accept any feedback, or the feedback is a little bit negative and they get angry about it, then this is not the right place for you. So you need to be able to listen to the feedback, get something from the feedback, and always try to improve. Definitely that. I think a lot of students have a misconception that TEFL is only theoretical. Not really. That's why we have those hours, because you tend to have a little bit of practice. Depends on the length of the course. You can definitely have at least a little bit of experience. And you can see constructive feedback is really important, but you have to take something out of it. So it's really, really important. Yeah, okay, you might gonna be angry for a day or 2, accept it and move on. That's how you become a better teacher. Because if you're just following the rules from the book, you teach whatever it's written in the book, that's fine, but that's gonna get too boring. It's gonna be dull. So the students won't be they might gonna finish the course with you, essentially, once you're gonna start teaching, but what's gonna happen after that? So I think future teachers could actually learn a lot from TEFL. I think it could help them with their confidence, because a lot of people are afraid to start teaching. So, when you're exposing yourself to situation that you could have unexpected circumstances, you become a better version of you. And again, TEFL helps you here, because first it's going to simplify things for you, and then it's going to try to connect everything for you so you can have a great understanding and try to implement this in your classes. Maybe in the first couple of months, even a year, you might gonna have to copy certain things, and that's fine. But that's how you learn. You have to try. Definitely. You have to try and see what works for you and what doesn't. And essentially, you will change certain things. It's not just gonna be, this is my lesson plan, this is what I'm gonna follow, that's how my classes will run. Absolutely not. I have a lot of classes that are pretty boring, and I know they're boring, but it's my curriculum. That's what I need to do for the class. But then the next time when I have a class, I try to use the material from my previous class, maybe like in a fun activity, maybe like in speaking, or maybe I will create a game. And that's how students love you, but also you feel proud because you did a good job.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of, there are some misconceptions people have when they start the TEFL course. I think the bad things of doing the TEFL course is that you can learn from the other teachers. Because sometimes when you are just teaching independently, you don't know what you can improve, and you don't have one like the others to observe your lesson. You don't know how your lesson goes. So I think the bad thing is you learn from the other teachers. It's not only for the tutors or the mentors, it's also from the other classmates. You can learn from each other. And I remember going through the process myself. I thought I already know how to teach, because at that time I was already teaching for about a year or two, and that can be straightforward. And then after doing the course, I realized I had so many habits I never questioned, and the qualification in the course forced me to think about the things I've been doing and how I can improve, and also to learn from the others. So I think even experienced teachers can learn from those courses. Yeah. So let's get practical. So for someone in Hong Kong right now, whether you're a local who's fluent in English or an expat who's been here for a while, what does having a proper TEFL qualification actually change for you in the real world?
Obviously, as I said at the beginning, I had the first TEFL course that I got was 50 hours. It does give you something, but again, what is important is you're not getting any practice. So if you haven't been teaching before, that course is not for you. To be fair with you, most of the online schools, they will ask you to have TEFL or TESOL, but they don't really care what kind of university degree do you have. So in that case, yes, potentially you could get the cheaper version. I remember when I got my first one and they were like, oh, that's fine, it's gonna do the job. Then once I start teaching, obviously I received the positive feedback and they said, well, you're actually qualified. But they've never asked for my bachelor's degree. They never wanted to see it. They just cared about TEFL. Then obviously, that was my beginning. Then I changed the school. I started working with a little bit more serious school, serious approach. When I started applying, obviously, for better jobs, yes, they valued everything. They wanted to know the type of TEFL I got. Where did I get it? How many hours? Did I have any practical classes? And that's really important. Because it's one thing what you do, what you learn, what you read, and it's another how you're going to start using it. So for me, it did help me a lot. But to be fair, I also got CELTA. So I would say for someone who hasn't got anything, they have just a bachelor degree, TEFL is the starting point. You really don't need CELTA. I got CELTA, but no one didn't ask for CELTA. When I apply for jobs, the HR, they don't care about that. They just see, TEFL course. And they would say, Natasha, why do you have them? What's the difference? They don't understand that, right? Unless they've been in a classroom, because it's different. But again, I didn't need it as much because I was already teaching. So I was into it. It could definitely open doors for better schools. That's for sure. You can also find higher paying positions. You can have international opportunities. At the moment, obviously, I am in the UK, but the two schools I work for are basically one is UK based, but the students are international students, and I love that. But the other one is in Malaysia, and the students are from Malaysia and China. So I had the opportunity to work in Italy, but I rejected it just because I kind of prefer teaching online a little bit better for me, to be honest. But my point is, you will get options. You will have a bunch of options. You could choose every single year to go to different places. Spain is a big market. Like, I had a lot of Spanish students. It was business English though, but still, tourism in Spain is huge. Everyone is buying flats over there, like UK specifically. They travel to Spain every single weekend. So they do have a lot of tourists, but Spanish people are very, warm and welcoming, but their English skills are not the greatest. So they do have need of teachers. I had an offer last year, I think it was in September, but because my plan was to go to US for 3 months, and I was like, can I do it later? They were like, anytime you want to, because we need qualified teachers. So again, you can have amazing international opportunities. If you're from Asia and you just don't want to be in Asia, maybe you want to go to Europe. Yes, absolutely, you can have that. So with the proper training, you can definitely achieve that. You can become more confident. One thing that I've noticed, maybe this is not really connected to the question, but I'm going to say it because I'm thinking about it. A lot of Asian students that I've had, they have a problem with ending the sentence. They don't have a problem with the grammar. Pronunciation maybe here and there, most of the time is accurate. The ending of the sentence, what does that mean? So obviously I don't speak any Asian languages, but I do know when I've heard like my students talking to their parents in Chinese, that the voice goes up and up and up. But in English, you have to end the sentence. And this is something that I've kind of pushed my students to practice a bit more. And I keep saying to them, remember, there is a full stop at the end of the sentence, which means the voice needs to go down. These things, you can definitely learn them in TEFL for sure, because the goal for us involved in this course is definitely to help future teachers to have better opportunities, to understand the course, to enjoy the job. And I think with TEFL, you can find a way how to make things fun for you, easy for you. And it can definitely lead international opportunities. Again, it depends on the person, right? Because if you are someone who wants to stay in your country, in your city, you can still find a job. But I feel like most of the time, especially now with, borders are open, people are traveling, moving from one place to another, English is definitely a must. So why not use it? And I'm not really afraid that there is an AI now, like it's really developed. Absolutely not. It cannot change the way that people will communicate in the future for sure. That's at least my thinking. Or maybe in the next 30 years. But at the end of the day, I'm 40. So in the next 30 years, I think I'm safe with my job for now. But that does not mean that, people shouldn't choose this job, this career. It is definitely not a job. It is a career. It is an investment. It doesn't mean I did this, I graduated, I took my TEFL, and I'm good to go. But I feel like then at the end of the day, a lot of people are doing this just because they love teaching. So, it helps them in any ways.
Yeah, a proper TEFL qualification really opens the doors for the teachers. And like a lot of teachers, they're teaching overseas, like in Europe, in Asia, and even in America. So that's a lot of opportunities for teachers who finish the TEFL course. And I see the pattern with people in Hong Kong. They are already teaching, maybe tutoring privately, or maybe helping in a school, maybe doing corporate English training, and they are good at it, but they don't have the qualification. So a recognized TEFL qualification doesn't just open doors, it changes how you are perceived and how much you can charge. And it changes how you see yourself as a professional. Like usually after doing a training and like you are qualified, you are more confident in teaching as well. And Yeah, and here's something I can speak to from a very specific angle because we place teachers in Hong Kong schools and I sit on both sides of this. So we train teachers, we place teachers. I can tell exactly what schools are looking at when the CV lands on their desk. So the awarding body actually matters. When you see a TEFL certificate from certain institutions, I'm not going to name those organizations, but like the people in the industry know, and we can tell immediately that the standard isn't there. Like I've experienced like from a lot of teachers, they did the TEFL course online for like in a few days, and when they actually teach in the classroom, it's completely different. For example, they don't know how to handle different students in the class. Like they don't know how to mix ability in the classroom. So like you can really tell that difference between a really trained teacher and an inexperienced teacher. So Natasha, for someone who's serious about getting qualified, what should they actually be looking for when choosing a course?
Like I would ask teachers or future teachers, is this like a hobby to you or is this a career? Because it's different. If this is a career, you definitely need to invest in quality training because you're going to get the proper education, you're going to get the qualified, the rewarding profession, which is good if this is what you want to do. If it's a hobby, definitely go for the cheapest version. I mean, there's nothing really you're going to lose. You might not going to win as much, but you're definitely not going to lose. I think it's really important for future teachers to understand that in TEFL, you need to know what are you prepared for. If you are prepared for a real classroom and real learners, then obviously that is a good quality course. And obviously, since I'm involved in education, I can do a little bit of more research. But I feel like a lot of parents are not really aware, especially like if they're having tutors or teachers for their children. They just look for native speakers. And we keep going back to native speakerism, basically. I definitely support the non-natives ones, and I think that they actually think of quality training more because of being exposed to this issue. With a lot of jobs, on LinkedIn specifically, when you want to apply and get a job, it says native speakers only. And that's why non-natives became a little bit better because they said, okay, I'm going to get the proper training, quality training, and this is going to open a lot of doors for me. And I don't know if you know, but I did a little bit of research about European teachers, non-native speakers. They're actually more wanted in Asia than native speakers, and especially like Thailand, Taiwan, those countries. Yes, they prefer non-native speakers because they found out that they're basically more invest in the classes, that they really want to teach the students compared to non-native who just want to go and travel. Again, this is not a hate, but this is what I, read on the internet, and I watched this podcast on YouTube, and they were actually saying that. And the lady was actually a native speaker, and she said, yeah, that's fine. I'm a native speaker. Again, it doesn't mean I have the right skills because I got TEFL for $20. So, I mean, what am I getting for $20, right? So I guess definitely something that future candidates need to search for is quality training. And obviously they could get it with more hours because the theoretical part, you can just read it anytime you want to. But once you're going to have a class, who's going to give you the feedback? And you have to be prepared for different scenarios. Yes, sometimes classes will be hard, but you just need to know what to do because you can't just leave the classroom and go. I mean, that's the easiest thing you could do, but then you shouldn't come back the next day. So definitely quality training. It is an investment, but at the end of the day, if that is the career for you, if that is your goal, this is what you want to work on, it's definitely worth it.
So for anyone who's been listening, whether you are a Hong Kong local who's fluent in English and has always thought about teaching, or an expat in Hong Kong looking for a qualification that will travel with you, I want to tell you about what we offer. So we run the TQ UK Level 5 Award in Teaching English. We are the only centre in Hong Kong officially recognised by TQ UK to deliver this qualification. And because we also place teachers in Hong Kong schools, we know exactly what the market is looking for. If you are interested, head to our website or send us a message, and we are happy to have a conversation about whether this is a right fit for you. So Natasha, thank you so much for being here, and you've brought something to this conversation I don't think anyone else could. If today's episode made you think, please share it with your friends. And this is Couch Potato Talk, and see you next time.
Thank you. Bye.